Good afternoon. How you all doing? So this is a great quote. Some see things as they are and ask why. Others see things as they could be and ask why not. So this is a quote I first learned from incredible man Jerry Hildebrand at Lynn University. And this morning, the first person I met is an incredible man named Edgar Crone, who was actually a speechwriter for Bobby Kennedy during the times when he said this quote, and it was attributed to him. So I think Edgar is actually in the room today, but he wrote this quote into Bobby Kennedy's speech. And then I met Scott Sherman right afterwards, and Scott said, well, that quote dates back to George Bernard Shaw. So I'm going to let Edgar and Scott fight this out afterwards. But the bottom line is that this quote has been foundational to the work that we're doing at Watson. And we've had the unique opportunity to start thinking about the university model from the ground up and looking at each element of the model and saying, why not? What if? And ask a series of those questions. Watson is a new model of higher education for social entrepreneurs. Our motto is protect your courage. For students to go out into the world and start solving problems that require them to take the road less traveled, it takes a fair amount of courage. And we aim to be a model, an environment, a community that really protects the courage of the students that we're working with. So I'll start with an example. This is Abhinav Kanal, who is from Nepal, but works with smallholder women coffee farmers in Costa Rica. And this is actually a bag of coffee that his company, Bean Voyage, sold. Now, what Bean Voyage does, it's a great name, by the way, they train women smallholder coffee farmers to not just grow, but also roast, distribute, and package the coffee and send it directly to consumers like you and me. Such that today we can go on beanvoyage.com, shameless plug, and buy some of the most delicious coffee in the world directly from farmers like Erica, who's pictured here. As a result, Erica's income increases 300%. Abhinav came to Watson with the idea for Bean Voyage. And he came away from Watson with seed funding, mentorship, a more developed business model, and the courage to jump into doing Bean Voyage, to take that key leap of faith full time. He's now in Costa Rica working with farmers like Eric and many others to grow Bean Voyage and continue to grow the impact that he's trailblazing in his life. So our goal is to unleash these lifetimes of impact. I know what this was like personally. When I was 17, I found myself on my own in a refugee community in western Uganda and met this small group of refugees from the Congo who had experienced one of the bloodiest conflicts since World War II. And as a 17-year-old, after having had about a month together, I asked, is there anything I can do to support you in this effort, in this vision you have to bring peace back to the Congo? And they said something which I was not expecting. They said the best way to help our community and the best way to help our country is to help us receive an education. And that made me think very differently about the purpose of an education, that it should be an investment in this young generation that pays off for generations to come. As a result, I started an organization called Educate in East Africa. We started with 3 students in 2002. Today, Educate is reaching over 500,000 students across Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, and we've integrated a leadership and entrepreneurship curriculum and mentorship model into the national education systems of Uganda and now Rwanda too. Started Educate in high school, worked on building it up in college, met some close friends, including Boris Bulayev, who became my co-founder and now the executive director of Educate. And I reflect back on that experience, and all the work I did with Educate happened from midnight till 2 a.m. or during the summers. Yet it became my career when I graduated, and when I look back on college, it is absolutely what I learned the most from. The process of building Educate, learning by doing, failing, getting back up, trying things differently, and experimenting, absolutely what I learned the most from. So why was it sidelined in my educational experience from midnight till 2 a.m. or during the summers? So at Watson, we said, what if we could design a new model of higher education specifically for young change makers to unlock these lifetimes of impact? So 2012, 2013, I was able to move to the board of Educate and start Watson. What if the curriculum was not one where the core curriculum was focused on learning how to think, but rather where the core of the experience centered on the ideas that students apply to us with? the ideas for positive social change that they apply to us with. And at the core of their experience was the training, the personal development, and then the actual equivalent of a laboratory to build out these ideas. That's exactly what Watson's curriculum does. There's 3 tracks. First is the personal development track, which is actually largely inspired by Scott Sherman, who is here with us, and the Transformative Action Institute. The second track is transformative entrepreneurship. These are the processes of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is a process. And so we focus on helping scholars move through the frameworks, move through the processes to develop and advance their ideas. And finally is the Watson Lab, where students are actually building the ideas, are actually creating change, building partnerships, learning by doing. And to give you an idea, each semester students are earning 9 credits towards their degree for the Watson Lab. So the majority of their credit, their degree credits, are coming from learning by doing. Quick show of hands, who here thinks learning by doing is the best way to learn? Most of us would agree with that. But the sad truth is that if you analyze most institutions of higher education, learning by doing is not a core central tenet. It's our hypothesis that learning by doing is not only the best way to learn about the world and engage in the world, it's also the best way to learn about ourselves as people. So we put it at the core, and then on the sidelines of a student's experience is what is normally thought of as the core curriculum. And it's that foundation in learning to think, which is important, but it's there to support the passions that students come to Watson with. What about the campus structure? In today's world, does it make sense to have one large campus in one community surrounded by a gate separated from the rest of the world? No, not at all. When we have students like Abhinav who are coming from Nepal, working in Costa Rica, and are global citizens from day one. So Watson's vision is actually to create a network of 50 microcampuses in key cities around the world so that students can complete their experience, experiment with ideas embedded in the communities and cultures that are most relevant to the work, learning from local mentors who are going to help them to advance their ideas. Our first campus is in Boulder, Colorado. There we go, is in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. And so we remember those floods back in 2013 for sure. We're based in Chautauqua Park. And this fall, we're excited to open our second location, actually embedded in Lynn University's campus in South Florida, just north of Miami. So Watson is a 501c3 nonprofit. Watson Institute at Lynn University is the group that actually runs our degree program in partnership with Lynn University. And we're excited about this next step towards the ultimate vision of creating a network of globally embedded micro-campuses, 30 to 50 students in each location. What if the teachers were not coming from an academic perspective in terms of the theoretical study, but were actually real practitioners who have had experience leading change, starting initiatives, and can work with the students in overcoming the challenges that they themselves have faced throughout their lives? And what if the teachers were actually mentors, coaches, who guided the scholars, the students individually through each of the challenges that are unique to their situation and unique to their passions? And that's why at Watson we bring in what we call master course teachers, practitioners who become short-term entrepreneurs in residence. We've been fortunate to have Erin Krampitz, who's also on our board as a master course teacher and is so missed here at the very first Ashoka U exchange ever without Erin, but she's 100% here in spirit. As well as folks like Jerry White, who co-led the international campaign to ban landmines, which has ensured that there's more landmines coming out of the earth than going into the earth. And others who come to Watson for 3 days, lead a workshop and one-on-one mentorship sessions with the scholars. Our equivalent of faculty are called preceptors. We were fortunate to have Scott Sherman as a preceptor the very first semester, set the foundation strong for us, who also lead one-on-one coaching sessions with the scholars, and each scholar is paired with 2 mentors and have weekly mentorship meetings to carry forward what they're working on. And then all this is great, but ultimately it comes down to people. And if you look at any budget of a college, the main line items have to do with people, and people are expensive. And for those of us who don't believe online education will ever be able to substitute fully the power of an in-person experience in a one-on-one mentorship session, we know that that's expensive. So none of this actually matters that much unless the financial model is also able to change. We're able to actually become radically affordable. So Watson has been pioneering an income sharing model for about 4 years. Some of you might be familiar with income sharing. It's an alternative to student debt. Instead of paying tuition up front, students can choose to share a percentage of their future income for a set number of years. We've been piloting income sharing for 4 years. This fall, we're actually launching the first completely tuition optional income sharing model where students can come in and rather than paying any tuition up front and going into zero debt, can complete their education and only pay in the future if that educational investment paid off for them. And what this does is it puts the risk of a student's educational investment off of their shoulders and onto our shoulders. And if our students are not successful, if our alumni are not successful, then neither are we. Student debt, amongst the many other problems that it has, student debt breaks the accountability link between the institution and the student because the institutions are not incentivized to care how or if alumni pay back that debt in the future. With income sharing, if our alumni's educational investment doesn't pay off, then Watson itself is not successful, and so therefore we are accountable to our, not just to our students, but also to our alumni. We've worked closely with a partner, Vimo Education, which facilitates income sharing agreements to design and build our income sharing program. I want to give a few examples of alumni. So this is Tessa Zimmerman, who was the first graduate of Watson's degree track. Suffered severe anxiety growing up. Her high school counselor said she would never go to college because she could never live away from home. Not what you want to hear from your high school counselor. She came to Watson on her degree track and proved the counselor wrong when she graduated and developed a program, Asset Education, that is working with 2,000 students across Colorado and New York to overcome their anxiety and improve their academic performance as a result. This is Patrick Mateer. Came to Watson with an idea that he had one day walking down the frozen food aisle. And he asked himself, why is it that I can't buy local frozen food? We can buy local fresh food in a lot of places. So he came to Watson with the idea for Seal the Seasons that would buy local produce from farmers and sell it in local grocery stores as frozen food. He built his first flash freezer outside of our dorm, Columbine Lodge in Boulder. And he called me up one day and said, Eric, do you know where I can find liquid nitrogen and PVC pipes? And I said, Patrick, what are you really building up there? But he built the first flash freezer, and today Seal the Seasons is selling in over 650 stores across North Carolina, where he's from, including Whole Foods and ShopRite. He's raised over $1.5 million, built a great team of 7 people, and is growing quickly. We've been running for 4.5 years, 4.5 years. Actually, April 27th is our 5-year anniversary. We've graduated 102 alumni from both our semester program and the degree track from 40 countries. Forbes 30 Social Entrepreneurs Under 30 came out recently. 2 Watson alumni were named to Forbes 30 Social Entrepreneurs Under 30. We've seen the alumni raise over $42.7 million for the social change initiatives that they're leading. We're lucky to have one of our esteemed alumni in the room today, Cece Zhang, who is continuing her education at Harvard Graduate School of Education and working to bring more changemaker-focused education back to her home country of China. We're small, about 25 to 30 students in each class. For the fall 2018 class, we received 416 applications. The average U.S. alumni salary is $47,000. 93% of our alumni are either employed, working on their venture, or continuing their education. And the last thing I want to emphasize is that everything that Watson does is the opposite of copyrighted. It's copylefted. And we believe that this is a small part of a greater movement that Ashoka U has helped to foster and build to rethink the way education is done. Many of you saw the Purdue Gallup study. One of the largest studies done in higher education's history. I think over 30,000 students polled. And it came away with 2 factors that were most linked to a student's future well-being. Some of you probably know this. 1, is there a supportive adult who cares about a student's success during and after their education? 2, are they applying what they're learning on a daily basis to something they care about? Only 3% of alumni said that they had both these things. 25% said they had none of neither of these things. And the difference in well-being between that 25% who didn't have any and the 3% who had both was a 17-fold difference in future well-being outcomes. That's a 1,700% difference in well-being. This isn't rocket science. Someone who cares about students during and after and the ability to apply on a daily basis what you're learning to something you care about. We can create an education that focuses on those things. And we hope that Watson can be a model of what it looks like to design an entire higher education system around those types of outcomes. But we want to work with others to find ways to integrate those into other institutions through a copylefting approach. All of our curriculum, mentorship models, et cetera, are fully open source. And in doing so, help build this movement and start to change the way higher education is done. Thank you.